Welcome into another PFF college football review show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton and Wasserman going over the biggest games of what was a chaotic Week 11 of college football. Of course, we're revealing all of the PFF grades. And if you want to get a PFF subscription like our guy Tyler in the chat right now, you can go to pff.com, subscribe to pff.com exactly, and get a PFF Plus subscription. You get all the grades from every college football game from FBS, FCS, even D2 level. You obviously get all the NFL grades as well. You also get access to our mock draft simulator. You can draft a full, I believe 4 rounds right now is available on the mock draft simulator.
That sounds about right.
I think 4. We'll get to 7 eventually when Trevor Sikkema eventually gets to all like 250, 300 prospects, whatever he has to get to 7 rounds, which he's very close to, by the way. So if you want that as well, and also the best fantasy tools on the entire planet are available with a PFF Plus subscription for the great Nathan Yonke, who I think is the best fantasy analyst. And literally, Dawn, I know this is not a fantasy football show, but Nathan Yonke runs my fantasy football team. I do not make any moves in my fantasy football league unless Nathan Yonke approves of it.
Oh,
honestly.
yeah, no, I won my league last year with our tools. This year I'm having a lot of bad luck, but last year, it was every week in and week out killing it.
Sounds like you're a bad manager, honestly, more than anything.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
You know, it's really about the owner more than the players. It always is.
Absolutely. So make sure you guys check it out, the PFF Plus subscription, and get it right now. And Tyler's trying to get it for Christmas right now. Our shadow guy, Tyler, in the chat. But Dawn, I said every week, man, we are only like a few weeks away from conference title weekend, and I feel like I'm learning less every week, not more. Usually you're learning, who are the real teams that to contend and all that. I'm learning less and less every week, and it just shows how chaotic this year has been.
Well, it is the season of chaos, Max. And you know what I really liked about this week? This was a week where I think you start seeing that November football kicking in, right? Teams, they might be good at one thing, but you need a complete team to get through this time of year. A lot of defense won the day this week. A lot of run games won the day this week. I don't think it was all that flashy a week for most teams, but I think you're starting to see the better teams coming out with more complete efforts, and the teams that aren't are the ones that came out and struggled this week. If you don't have a complete team by this point and going into the last 3 weeks of the regular season, you're going to have some serious problems. And I think you're seeing more teams' flaws getting exposed as the year is going on.
Absolutely. So just to remind people what we're doing here on the PFF College Football Review Show, every game that is here on this desk right now, we'll be going over all the PFF grades and showing our most impressive part of the game, our stat that tells a story. So all these games, and also at the end of it, are 3 standouts from the week from outside of these 7 games here on the desk. And we're going to be going over what the college football playoff picture would look like as of right now today after a chaotic Week 11 of college football. Let's get right into it, though, Dalton, with the first game, and that is Ole Miss dominating Georgia. Number 16 Ole Miss beating number 3 Georgia 28-10. Let's go over the highest graded players, starting off with the Ole Miss Rebels. Their highest grade player, and really a lot of their highest grade players, are on the defensive line. Xavier Harris, 93.3 grade. Jared Ivey, 90.5 grade. Princely Iman Mielen, 81.8 grade. Jaden Kennedy, the cornerback, 77.5. Walter Nolan, the D-tackle, 75.5. Their 5 highest graded players all came from the defensive side of the football, with 4 of them coming on that elite defensive line, and then Jackson Dart rounding it out at a 71.9 grade. Let's go over to Georgia with their highest graded players in their loss to Ole Miss. Starting off with Warren Brinson, the D-tackle, 85.8. Another D-tackle there, Nazir Stackhouse, 76.6. Edge defender Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins at a 73.4. Linebacker C.J. Allen, 70.4. Jalen Walker, another linebacker, 70. And then Carson Beck with a 67.2 grade. So, Dawn, for you, what was the stat that told the story in this Ole Miss victory?
So it's been one of the more surprising things, although they brought in plenty of pieces in the portal, right, like Iman Mielen and Walter Nolan. This Ole Miss team is a defensive team, first and foremost, right? And we've seen the offense kind of come and go, and it kind of came and went in this game. They had stretches where they were good. They made enough plays. Jackson Dart threw a lot of shorter passes, moved the chains. They didn't have Trey Harris again in this game, which we thought might hurt them, but they've had success the last couple weeks without Harris. I got to focus on this defense, though. As a team, an 86.6 team defense grade. That's their second best this season, and the only team they were better against was Week 1 against Furman, an FCS opponent. It's actually their second best against a Power 5 team in PFF history. We've been tracking college since 2014. It's the best since 2014. It was during 2014, I believe it was a game against Tennessee, was the one game that was better. So this is actually, by the grading, their best defensive performance in the last 10 years. And Georgia, 10 points for them it ties their lowest total under Kirby Smart. This is just up front, this front 7 all year for Ole Miss. You saw it with 4 of those 5 guys in that graphic there. This front seven, this defensive line specifically, has been dominating teams all season. They have not had a bad defensive effort all season. Even to me, the loss to LSU was about their offense taking too many shots and putting their defense in bad spots. This Ole Miss team, they're getting the offense rolling now without Trey Harris. They're finding what works, the shorter intermediate throws, right? When they get Trey Harris back and their offense now is fully loaded and their defense continues to play like this, and we have issues here with Georgia's offense too that you're getting into. Georgia's not equipped to play with a defense like this, but when it's Georgia versus Ole Miss, we've never said this before. There's very few teams that can score on Ole Miss right now. There's so few of them, and maybe, just maybe, because of this defense carrying them through some hard times, and even though they have 2 losses, and now their offense has started to figure it out the last 3 weeks, maybe Ole Miss is getting hot and maybe starting to play that elite football we thought they would in the preseason.
They really do look like it right now. We had Ole Miss as a number 4 in our preseason ranking, I believe, and they are starting to prove it right now. And we were kind of worried about them once they suffered a couple losses, but now, I mean, they are rolling. And really, my set to tell story kind of goes into that as well. Georgia had negative .403 EPA per pass. That's the worst since the COVID 2020 season for the Bulldogs. They averaged 5.8 yards per pass attempt, 3.4 air yards per completion. So what that means basically is every completion Carson Beck had was basically 3.5 yards downfield. They were not getting anything downfield against Ole Miss. And listen, Beck wasn't great, 62.6 passing grade, but honestly, the surrounding cast was even worse. They had a 56 receiving grade and a 50.9 pass blocking grade. It was their worst pass blocking grade all year against Ole Miss. Nothing went right in the passing game for them. And honestly, the one thing that Georgia had to rely on all year in their passing game, with Beck kind of struggling and having basically nothing in the receiving core that really scares defenses, what they had, though, was an elite offensive line protecting Carson Beck, which allowed him to get time back there and find receivers, open receivers, eventually, because obviously, no matter how bad your receivers are, one of them is going to get open if you give them enough time back there. And that's how their passing game worked, honestly. But when you don't have the elite pass protection, then the receiving core struggles. Beck struggles as well. They just don't have the weapons right now. They don't have a Brock Bowers. They don't have a Ladd McConkey right now. And you can clearly see that. And if your offensive line is not dominating like they've been all year, they struggle. And Beck is really bad under pressure as well. And Carson Beck, we've seen time and time again now, Dalton, he is a quarterback that needs an elite supporting cast to succeed. Last year, when he was like a top 5 quarterback in the country, he had Brock Bowers, he had Ladd McConkey, and he had an elite offensive line. He didn't have an elite offensive line today, and he hasn't had those kind of weapons all year, and that's why you're seeing Carson Beck go from a projected maybe top 10 pick of the NFL draft to out of the first round, maybe out of the second round altogether.
Yeah, no, it's just he doesn't – we've seen by now without McConkey and Bowers that he doesn't do enough to create – for what this year I think we could consider subpar weapons, right? I mean, we've got 2 or 3 tight ends who none of them are anywhere near as good as Bowers, who's maybe the best to ever do it in college. You lose Ladd McConkey, who was your number 1 guy. You have Dominic Lovett and Dylan Bell and some other guys, but they've played average football all season. And is it right? Does Georgia lead the nation in drops?
I think they do.
If they don't lead the nation, they're somewhere near the top. I mean, it just shows you this offense is not the same. And I'll be honest with you, you mentioned all those numbers and against Ole Miss. It doesn't get any easier next week.
That defense.
Tennessee's defense is just as good. I mean, the
secondary is even better, I would say, than Ole Miss.
You could argue it, yeah. I mean, and you got James Pierce Jr. coming off the edge. You got all those defensive linemen playing well.
And without the way that Georgia tackles played yesterday against James Pierce Jr., that's trouble.
I mean, you have reason to believe they may only score 10 points again next week playing like this.
Georgia is 81st in receiving grade right now, tied with Charlotte.
Yeah,
81st in the country.
Yeah,
in receiving grade.
I mean, it's been the same problems all year. They don't get open. The pass protection has been good before this game, but this was an elite defensive line.
Yeah, they're still 15th in pass blocking grade this year.
But they're playing an elite defensive line next week. And Carson Beck just – he's not going to create. I think we've made in the past Jared Goff comparisons, and that's what it has to be. If the environment is right, like it was last year, he'll be spectacular. And he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Right now, there's just this Georgia offense is incredibly concerning. I'll be honest, I don't think they can win a national title with this offense.
I don't think so either. And honestly, like the Goff comparisons I liked preseason, now, like I said before, I think he's the Goff of college football. Where Goff, like in the NFL, needs an elite supporting cast, but in college, obviously at Cal, he didn't have that, and he was still great. Beck is the Goff of college football. Like, he needs an elite supporting cast in college football in order to succeed. NFL, who knows? I mean, he might need like the best supporting cast of all time in order to succeed in the NFL, like a San Francisco 49ers type supporting cast that Brock Purdy has. But even Brock Purdy is balling right now too. I don't know. I'm really just pessimistic on Carson Beck right now. I still think there's something there with him that I would take a flyer on in the day 2 of the NFL draft, but first round, I'm terrified of that guy right now. Absolutely.
No, I don't think he's not a first round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, I only think there's 2 guys in the country right now I'd say are first round picks, and he's certainly not one of them.
All right, so Dalton, we talk a lot about Georgia, and I will get into them at the very end as well. But what was the most impressive part of this Ole Miss victory?
The defense is obviously something, and you're going to get into a specific part of that. But you know what? I have to credit Ole Miss's quarterbacks, and there's a reason there's a plural on that. I'll start with Jackson Dart. Okay, look, it started as badly as it could have. We were watching early in this game. He throws the interception, and he gets his ankle turned while throwing it, and we're both like, this just became another Ole Miss Georgia game, right? Same old story, but. Came back from that interception, played well. When he was kept clean, he had an 82.6 grade in a clean pocket. 8 carries for 55 yards, gave him something on the ground. But I also want to point out the moment of this game, I should say, happened very early, right after that whole sequence where Jackson Dart throws an interception, a bad one, at his own 20-yard line. Turns his ankle. We're not sure if he's going to keep playing. Georgia scores a touchdown, of course, off it because they're going to, right? Austin Simmons, a redshirt freshman, comes in for one drive with Jackson Dart out, and he goes 5 for 6 with 64 yards and an 88 passing grade and led a drive that tied the game right after that whole sequence. And I think you could feel almost this – now, I don't know if they knew Dart was coming back or not, but you could feel this sense of relief where it was like, okay, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe we can do this, right? There was a belief. I think if Ole Miss makes the playoff, I think this one drive by Austin Simmons, who I think coming into the game only had 25 or 30 pass attempts in his career. He was getting mop-up duty all season in some of the blowouts they were playing. This one drive, I think, is going to be a huge catalyst for the rest of their season because it just got them. We both felt it because we knew Ole Miss' biggest problem in this game was the mental hurdle of just beating Georgia, right? I don't think we thought talent-wise they were worse than Georgia. I came on here and picked them to win and said, look, if you didn't know the logos on the helmets, you would think Ole Miss is the better team.
I only picked Georgia because of Kirby Smart.
Because they're Georgia.
The aura. Yeah. I was like, no, it's Georgia.
But there was something about that drive with a redshirt freshman backup quarterback coming in and playing well and leading that touchdown drive to tie the game after you got off to the single worst start you possibly could have. It just reset everything. And then Dart came back in and everything went the way. It's like for some reason they just started believing.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be crucial. That's why I have both quarterbacks in for this. I know it's just one drive from Austin Simmons, but that may have honestly been the biggest drive of Ole Miss season. When you consider now what they have the rest of the way, they should make the playoff.
I don't want to be hyperbolic. That could be one of the biggest drives for Ole Miss ever.
And it might seem minute. Because it's in the first quarter, it's like 6-7 minutes into the game. It's okay, it was only 7. All you did was tie the game 7-7. I don't think it can be overstated what that mentally did for that team. That kid going in there and playing how he did for that one drive and being prepared, and Lane Kiffin having him prepared in that situation against that Kirby Smart and that team, like you mentioned. I think it just took all of that pressure off of Ole Miss's shoulders, and they just said, you know what? Let's just play football now. We shouldn't be afraid of these guys.
Yeah, and honestly, I was surprised. So I know you're not a big recruiting guy, Dalton, but I was surprised because I knew Ole Miss's quarterback room had Austin Simmons and they had Walker Howard. I didn't know that. I'll admit firsthand, I did not know who the backup quarterback was when Jackson Dart got hurt. I thought it was going to be Walker Howard because Walker Howard is a year older than Austin Simmons, and Walker Howard was like a top 50 recruit in the country coming out of high school. He's like the number 6 quarterback in the country coming out. Simmons was more of like a top 20 quarterback in the country coming out of high school. So I just assumed because of recruiting that Walker Howard, being a year older, being a much more heralded recruit than Austin Simmons, I thought he was the backup quarterback. So when Austin Simmons came in, I was surprised by that. And I was like, all right, let's see what the kid's got. And like you said, that drive was massive by him. So obviously I understand recruiting rankings are not the end-all, be-all, but I just, knowing the recruiting background, thought that Walker Howard would be the guy. And Austin Simmons ended up being the backup quarterback, and he did an excellent, excellent job in that. So yeah, shout out to him. That was a critical drive for them. And honestly, they didn't score a touchdown there. Who knows what would have happened in this game, honestly, because that was big for their confidence. My most impressive part, though, going back to the defensive line, the edge defenders for Ole Miss specifically were dominating in this game. A 90.7 pass rushing grade combined for all of Ole Miss's edge defenders. Of their 14 pressures in this game, 13 of them came from their edge defenders. Princely Umanmielen, 2 sacks and 6 pressures on 27 pass rushing snaps. Jared Ivey, 2 sacks, 3 pressures on 31 pass rushing snaps. Taron Perkins, 1 sack, 4 pressures on 20 pass rushing snaps. So you had guys that had 5 total sacks from those 3 edge defenders right there. And I mentioned before, it was a heavyweight battle between Georgia's offensive line and Ole Miss's defensive line. Whoever won that battle is most likely winning this game. And Ole Miss's defensive line really dominating on that. And I think that was a big reason why they held Georgia to 10 points and dominated this game.
It's the reason why, and it's the reason I would be worried about Georgia going into next week, going against James Pierce Jr. and all those guys that Tennessee has up front, because it does not get any easier. No, you talked about it. Ilman Mielen, one of the best transfer additions by anybody in the portal this year.
That would be a first-round performance.
Could be a first-round pick. Yeah, that could be a game that gets him into the first round. I know I just mocked that. I think it 31 overall. I mean, it's the additions they've made on their defensive line, and Jared Ivey's had a fantastic year too.
So
we need to talk about him more as well. But
Perkins too. Taron Perkins has been really good too.
No, they're loaded. Their front seven's loaded. It's been the best part of their team all year, despite having a lot of weapons on offense and everything's always flashy with Lane Kiffin. Their front seven, Ole Miss front seven, has been the best part of their team this year, and it won them this game.
Isn't it insane, Dalton, that we have 3 weeks left of the regular season and Georgia is in win-out mode now? They have to win out. They cannot lose a game.
I think now losing next week, maybe it's not a death knell.
I think it's done. What are they going to do to make up for it? I mean, they're already probably on the outside looking in right now.
They're going to hope there's just more chaos around them.
Yeah, but I don't know if
they may be, because of the 3 losses that they'll have, Bama, Ole Miss, Tennessee. They may be the one team that they're going to make a case to be 9-3.
My only thing is and we'll get to the playoff bracket at the end, but as of right now, we don't have Georgia in the playoff. They lose to Tennessee, they're even further down. They have UMass and Georgia Tech left. What are they going to do to make up for it? I don't think I think they're screwed.
Tell you what, it's a good transition there, because Georgia Tech, we know they can beat anybody too, and we learned that yesterday as well, didn't we?
You know what? That we're all talking about the Tennessee game for Georgia next week as the game. It might not be, honestly, with Georgia Tech the way they're playing as well. But Georgia Tech beating number 4 Miami, handing Miami their first loss of the entire season, 28-23. Let's go over the highest grade players, starting off with the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Their highest grade player was offensive tackle Corey Robinson, the second, 82.9 grade. Jackson Hall as a tight end at 82.8. Kyle Efford, the linebacker, at a 78.1. Rylan Godey, the tight end, at a 74.8. And linebacker EJ Lightsey at a 71.4, with Haynes King rounding it out at a 77.2. Let's go over to the Miami side of the ball with their highest grade players and their first loss of the season. O.J. Frederick Jr., the cornerback, at a 80.5. Jalen Alderman, 78.8. Markel Bell, the offensive tackle, at a 78.4. Jacoby George at a 77.2, the wide receiver. Damian Martinez, the running back, at 74.7. And Cam Ward with a 70 grade in the loss. So, Dalton, for you, what was the stat that tells the story in Miami's first loss of the year?
I say it all the time. You let a team get in their wheelhouse, they can beat you. And Georgia Tech was living in their wheelhouse. 271 yards on the ground, 5.6 yards per carry, had the ball for almost 35 minutes. They ran for 2 touchdowns. They had their second best run blocking grade of the season. They established from the very beginning of this game that they were going to run the football, because that's what they do. And there's some other situational stuff that makes this even worse for Miami, but Georgia Tech, when they get in all the option stuff and they can pop off 5 yards a carry, we've seen this how many times this year? It goes all the way back to week 0 against Florida State, right? Mm-hmm. They get in their wheelhouse, they can beat you. And I'll tell you what, I think it hurts even more for Miami knowing all the things that happened developing, especially early in this game. 1, Haynes King, clearly not 100%. I don't know if we could call him 70%. He could not throw the football. He threw the ball 6 times in this game. Max's average depth of target was negative 1.5 yards. But Haynes King...
That's insane.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Haynes King he threw 1 ball past the line of scrimmage, I think, and it was 4 yards. No, a negative average depth of target. Basically, when Haynes King was in there, they were going to run it. And when they needed to throw it, they were putting true freshman Aaron Philo out there to throw the ball. Okay? So just based on the quarterback on the field, Miami should know what the call is. Yeah. Haynes King threw a couple of screens, and I think 2 of them were jet sweeps, really. I mean, Haynes King could not throw the football. And Miami still gave up 270 yards on the ground. Aaron Philo is a true freshman. He actually threw a touchdown in this game. They put him out there because he had an arm. That's pretty much where we were at. And Zach Pyron the last couple weeks didn't get the job done, so they went with a true freshman. And Jamal Haynes after a first drive where he carried them down to their first touchdown. Played 5 snaps in this game. The very next drive, he got hurt. And that was it for Jamal Haynes. So they were down their top running back. Haynes King was incapable of throwing the football. And Georgia Tech still managed to out-physical Miami and get in their wheelhouse. It's the most rushing yards Miami's given up since 2020. I don't know if you remember this game against North Carolina where Javonte Williams, the Javonte and Michael Carter game, where they ran for over 500 yards.
Yeah.
This is the most rush yards they've given up since that game.
Damn.
So, look, Miami they let Georgia Tech get in their wheelhouse, and they limited drives, and they limited Cam Ward's opportunities, and they had the ball for 35 minutes, and they just found a way to grind it out and get one big play on defense at the end, and that was that. But it starts everything with Georgia Tech. They got weapons on the outside. They have Singleton and Rutherford, and they can do some things, but everything starts with the run game. And they got to the run game, and they played the game at the pace that they want to play it. It looked exactly like the Florida State game at the beginning of the season. They just controlled the pace of the game.
Dalton, I don't think I've ever seen a negative 1.5 yard average at the target. I've never seen it before.
He literally could not throw the football.
It's almost like a lateral at every play. Basically. That's insane. That's crazy. If you told me that was the average at the target for Haynes King and Jamal Haynes would play 5 snaps, I would have said Miami's going to wipe the floor with them. And they didn't. They lost this game, which just shows how amazing that run game was for Georgia Tech and the fact they were able to rely on that even with Miami knowing exactly what's going to happen. I'll get into that, my most impressive as well, because I think that goes right into it. But my side to tell the story, though, on money downs, Miami was 4 for 14 on 3rd and 4th down. Georgia Tech was 9 for 14 on 3rd and 4th down. On money downs, Miami, negative .719 EPA per play. Negative 1.001 EPA per pass. If you get into the negative 1, like not even the decimals anymore, that's really bad. Georgia Tech was .74 EPA per play on money downs and .952 EPA per pass. Almost a full 2 points better than Miami in terms of EPA per pass. And on the most important plays of the game, Dawn, they needed Cam Ward to be Superman, and he tried. He really did. He was dancing around back there. But honestly, it didn't happen despite his best efforts. And Georgia Tech only had 99 passing yards. But on the times they did need to throw the football on money downs, they were beautifully designed to get first downs, honestly. So really the stat tells the story is that Miami just was 4 for 14 on 3rd and 4th down, and Georgia Tech was 9 for 14. Kept drives alive, scored touchdowns because of it, and Miami just couldn't do it. They couldn't punch it in.
And Tech being 9 of 14 on 3rd and 4th down is another reason they were able to extend those drives. They were in good 3rd down situations, short yardage. They were picking up their 4 or 5 yards a carry, and they could keep running the ball on 3rd down, right? I mean, it all went together to play Georgia Tech's style of ball, and you mentioned it, Cam Ward had to be Superman, and this is what we questioned with Miami is, okay, is the rest of their team stacked up enough? Do they run the ball enough? They didn't run the ball enough in this game. It wasn't good enough. Is their defense... Does it have enough depth beyond the defensive line to get it done, right? And I mean, and this was a game where their defensive line was obviously challenged with the way this Georgia Tech team was running, but I just don't – this was the problem for Miami. It was too much about one guy and one guy putting up monster stats. And the other thing, too, I believe this is the 4th game where they were behind by double digits in the second half. They won the first 3, but that's not a way to live every single week. You can't be down 2 scores in the second half every week and expect to win all of them, right? Eventually, you're just not going to get it done. So Miami, look, these are the things that have hurt them this year and just haven't hurt them enough to come into, to become a loss. Now the breathing room is gone.
Yep.
And once again, Georgia Tech is the team that's the thorn in their side, and this doesn't ruin their season like it did last year, because that was just a whole different thing last year. But the breathing room is now all of a sudden not there. If Miami gets to 2 losses one way or the other, we're gonna have serious questions about
11-2,
should they be in or not.
If they lose a game in the regular season, or excuse me, if they win out in the regular season and then lose in the ACC title game, I don't know if they get in.
They are going to be extremely borderline.
Yeah,
if that's the case, they're going to be really borderline because their wins, I mean, list out their wins. It's
Louisville.
It's Florida. Louisville's the best win.
Yeah.
You got Louisville, not Virginia, Cal,
Duke.
Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, I should say. Duke is like solid, but there's not a monster win in there, and they probably need to hope Louisville keeps winning and finishes somewhere in the top 18 to 20 for that to hold up. And even then, they gave up 45 points in that game. So I was worried about
Syracuse at the end of the year. Syracuse tough loss yesterday.
But you know what? To your point,
They beat Virginia Tech.
To your
though,
point,
another one.
if Miami's secondary keeps playing the way they played in weeks prior to this, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at with this Miami team. If Cam Ward doesn't grade a 90 any given week or doesn't have a crazy second half, this is what they look like.
No, I mean, Virginia Tech's also a solid win, but like I said, there's just not that, like, besides Louisville, they have not beaten a top 25 team besides them, honestly. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough for Miami. They really are backs against the wall right now. Dalton, for you, what was the most impressive part of the Georgia Tech victory?
This game was ugly. I got to be honest with you. It's not even like a big stat thing or anything. I'm just surprised the way that the condition he was in, that Haynes King gutted this game out. I got to be honest with you. He was basically a glorified running back in this game, if we're being honest. He had 20 with whatever shoulder injury he has that clearly has him at not very healthy.
Yeah.
23 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown, taking hits in there. I mean,
he was lowering his right shoulder in some of those hits, too. He's a gamer.
I guess they told him impact is fine and throwing isn't, because
he can't feel good, though.
He was basically a wildcat quarterback in this game, and he found a way to gut it out and just lead this team to a win like this. It was an ugly game on both sides of the ball, but Haynes King, I guess, getting through all of the ugliness, I'm going to give him credit for that. That takes, I'll tell you what, that takes a leader is what it takes.
Absolutely.
I'm serious. With that sort of injury, he could have easily sat out and been, but he wanted to go out there and win this game, and he did it.
Absolutely. My most impressive part was the Georgia Tech offensive line. So that Miami defensive line, man, we were at that Louisville game. We were on the field, and you and I turned to each other like, that's an NFL D line right there with all those guys on there. And the Yellow Jackets didn't flinch one bit looking at that defensive line. Georgia Tech offensive line had a 71.2 grade as a unit. The highest before this year against Miami was a 63.4, so the highest by like 8 points. It's the highest pass blocking grade by an offensive line against Miami all year, and the highest run blocking grade against Miami all year as well. They knew that without a passing game, they only had 99 passing yards total in this game. They knew without a passing game, they needed to be the more physical team. And they did that in this one, both pass blocking and run blocking wise. I want to shout out the Georgia Tech offensive line for, they're not the sexiest part, or they're not Haynes King or any of the running backs or any of the receivers, but they got the job done against what is one of the best D lines in the country. And Georgia Tech's offensive line was one of the biggest reasons why they won this game.
Gotta love a good offensive line, don't you?
Yeah.
It's just awesome to watch. It is. And I mean, and you're right there. It's guys like that and efforts like what King gave them that make a win like this possible, especially a gritty.
No Jamal Haynes either. It's not like
especially a gritty run game win like this. I mean, no, you're right. That's absolutely the unit to call out there.
Absolutely. All right, next one we're talking about is number 11 Alabama dominating number 15 LSU and most likely ending LSU's playoff hopes. 42-13 final score. LSU now has 3 losses on the season. Let's go over to Alabama's highest graded players in this victory for them. Highest graded player was linebacker Jahad Campbell, 84.6 grade. Bray Hubbard, the safety, 80.6. LT Overton with an 80.5 grade. James Smith with an 80.3. Deontay Lawson with a 72.4. And the highest graded player, Jalen Milroe, 91.4 grades. Go over to LSU with their highest graded players in the loss. Emory Jones Jr., the offensive tackle, 76.5. Miles Frazier, 71.6. Gio Paez at a 70.5. Kyron Lacey, 68.9. Ashton Stamps, 66.3. And Garrett Nussmeier with a 61.4 grade. Dawn, for you, what was the stat that told the story?
Okay, so there's an obvious thing with the run game that you're going to get into, but I'm going to take the LSU side here. And the concern that I had and the concern that I've had all year with LSU is, similar to what we just kind of said with Miami, is do they have enough around Garrett Nussmeier and on the rest of this team to get it done? Because I thought in our preview on Tuesday, I said they asked Garrett Nussmeier to do a lot. Almost at a level that they asked Jaden Daniels to do last year. And Nussmeier is not Daniels, and he doesn't have the weapons that Daniels had. And even that team went 9-3 because they didn't have the defense, right? This Garrett Nussmeier, 60.2 passing grade. Okay, it is what it is, right? I'm not going to sit here and blame him for this game. That's not the point. LSU's running backs, 16 carries, 87 yards. Sounds good on the surface, but more than half of those yards, 45 of them, were on one early Caden Durham run. I believe it was on their first or second drive of the game that got him into scoring range. They only kicked a field goal from there. Okay, so the running backs, otherwise, 15 carries, 42 yards, not getting it done. Offensive line, that was supposed to be an elite unit, right? I think, did you have them as a top 5 unit coming into the year?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Second lowest grade of the season in this game. I think the only game they were worse was the South Carolina game. Worst defensive game they played all season. The lowest graded, just everything about it. They just got mauled on defense. Garrett Nussmeier is really good. He is not good enough to carry this team through these things. Through below average defense, which it was getting better. There was a stretch in the middle of the year. It was getting better. And then the last 6 quarters, it has all come apart again on defense. This time in the run game, right? It hasn't come apart in the secondary like it did last year. Now in the run game, when they've seen Marcel Reed and Jalen Milroe, defense has come apart. They haven't been able to run the ball all year outside of, like in this game, an occasional spark from Caden Durham. Garrett Nussmeier can't carry them through this. And he didn't. I mean, at this point, and it's, again, nothing against him. He's just not Jaden Daniels. He never was. And between the run game being non-existent without Daniels and just it's just not it. They had the best offense in the country last year. To expect him to do that again and not get better anywhere else on your football team is really flawed thinking. And I'm not surprised that this has happened to LSU. Now, did they get physically dominated in this game? They did. But they're just not a good enough team to think that they're one of the 12 best teams in the country all the way around. They weren't last year with Jaden. How are they going to do it this year?
Yeah, it was awful. It was an awful performance by LSU all around, honestly. And they're putting too much pressure on Nussmeier, honestly. And he's just proven that he's not a guy that can carry a team like that to victory. I know a lot of people had him as a first-round pick in the NFL draft. That's another one, man. I'm terrified. There were 2 guys in this NFL draft that I'm not terrified of selecting in the first round, and it's Shedeur Sanders and it's Cam Ward. That's it. Everyone else, I am very scared of taking in the first round of the NFL draft. I know one of them will, or multiple of them will. But
I wouldn't guarantee that. Look, we saw 2022. One guy went in the first round, Kenny Pickett, that really shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And 3 guys went in 2023, but they all went in the first 4 picks.
Yeah. No, we could only see 2.
I could see it being 2. I think the worst thing you can do as a franchise is force a guy into that selection when he's not like that. I think you just mentioned the 2 guys. Those are the 2 first round picks. That's it.
But one guy who maybe could go back in the first round, Dalton, is Jalen Milroe. And listen, there's still some stuff there to clean up with him, and that makes me a little wary of him as well. But in our preview, I said LSU's defense has a big problem with quarterbacks that are mobile and has a big arm. And Jalen Milroe has both of them. And LSU specifically, I talked about the mobile and how they really struggle with mobile quarterbacks. Lenore Sellers had 107 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half against LSU before going down with an injury. Marcel Reed was not playing in the first half in the Texas A&M LSU game because Connor Wigman was playing, but in the second half he came in. Marcel Reed in the second half had 59 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, all in the second half. So you had one guy with over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns and a half, another guy with 60 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns and a half. You got to wonder, wait a minute, if you have a guy who plays the entire game, what does that look like? Jalen Milroe is what they look like right there. 185 rushing yards for Jalen Milroe against LSU with 4 rushing touchdowns, 6 broken tackles, 14.2 yards per carry. Dalton, he has legit 4.4 speed. I've seen some people say he might have 4.3 speed as well. LSU does not have the speed to keep up with mobile quarterbacks. You saw it with Lenore Sellers. You saw it with Marcel Reed. Now you're seeing it with Jalen Milroe. And honestly, Dalton, when I watched the tape back last night, I kept thinking to myself, man, they are missing Harold Perkins. Harold Perkins would have been the perfect spy for these quarterbacks because he is very, very fast in himself. But he went down with the torn ACL, obviously. LSU just does not have the speed defensively for these mobile quarterbacks. And this is the 3rd time now they got burned by a mobile quarterback. 2 of them led to a loss. 1 of them they almost lost to South Carolina. And Jalen Milroe, almost 200 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns for a quarterback against LSU. I said in the previous, it's a big problem, and it turned out to be even a bigger problem than I even thought it was going to be.
Yep, credit to Kalen DeBoer for just allowing it to be like that and having a game plan like that where they just go, you know what, we're just going to run it till we can, especially with the weather the way it was in Baton Rouge. It was raining last night. I mean, no, Milroe took this game over with his feet, and he can absolutely do that. We've seen him do it before. He walks on almost any field as the best athlete, and he was last night.
Definitely. So, Dalton, for you, what was the most impressive part of Alabama's victory?
You know, we've had questions at times this year about Alabama's defense, but I have to love watching these 2 linebackers play, Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. Campbell, highest graded player on the team, 4 pressures as a blitzer, 2 sacks, including a strip sack, 10 tackles, a pass breakup, 8 defensive stops. Jahad Campbell was just all over the place like he is every week. And Deontay Lawson, you mentioned their number 5 player in this game, 10 tackles himself, 3 stops, the big interception down on the goal line. I'll tell you what, the turnover that each of these two guys forced were maybe the 2 biggest plays in the game, at least defensively for Alabama. You talk about it was late in the second quarter with Campbell's strip sack, and that really caused a problem for LSU late in the first half, and then they went down 21-6. And then right in the third quarter, when it looked like LSU, they drive all the way down inside the 10-yard line, and they have some sort of momentum, and Lawson just makes a great play, comes off one receiver, goes into the window of the slant that Nussmeier's looking for, picks the ball off, just a great play. These 2 linebackers are terrific football players. I mean, they are the heart and soul of this defense. We know they got a young secondary. It's not the best pass rush Alabama's ever had, but Campbell and Lawson, just heart and soul, man, these 2 guys, and they carried this defense in this game.
They are terrific linebackers. I think it's easily the best part of their entire defense is their linebacker unit. It's outstanding. I want to shout out another defensive player, though. That is Bray Hubbard, the safety, because he isn't being put in a tough spot right now. He's a true sophomore. Keon Sabb is injured right now. So Bray Hubbard is coming in, kind of playing safety alongside Malachi Moore right now. He is doing an unbelievable job in relief of Keon Sabb. In this game, he had an 80.6 PFF grade against LSU, like I just mentioned before, in our highest grade players. 0 catches allowed on 2 targets. He had an interception and a forced incompletion in this game as well. So 2 targets, a pick, and a forced incompletion. You can't get better than that, honestly. Dalton, he's had 4 games where he's played 25 snaps this year. He has at least a 75 grade in all 4 of those games. And he has 2 80-plus grades recently as well. Like I said, true sophomore. He is a rising star in this Alabama secondary. I understand they brought in a lot of 5-star corners that are playing, a lot as well. But Bray Hubbard, obviously not a 5-star recruit. He was like a 4-star recruit last year. Still very good, obviously. But true sophomore, man. And every time he comes in, because he's not a normal starter, every time he comes in, though, I'm so impressed by this kid, honestly. So want to shout out Bray Hubbard for filling in for a star player in Keon Sabb. And honestly, there's not really a drop-off right now from Keon Sabb to Bray Hubbard the way he's playing. So want to shout him out, man, because that is a tough spot he's been put in against some really good passing games, and he is playing lights-out football.
He had a big interception in the Missouri game, too, didn't he?
He did.
I think that was him, right? Down the left sideline down there, I think it was. Yeah, no, he's been playing good football lately. And honestly, even when Sabb comes back, he needs to keep playing.
Yeah.
He just, has some way, work his way into that safety rotation with Sabb and Malachi Moore. He's been playing really good football.
Like I said, 4 games with 25 snaps, all 4 of them 75 grade, and 2 of them 80-plus grade. Like, that's unreal for a true sophomore in the SEC at safety as well. So, shout out Bray Hubbard, and shout out the Alabama Crimson Tide for keeping their season alive with a victory, and meanwhile killing LSU season as well. All right, next up we're talking about Dawn, just insanity. I hope you guys stay up for this one like we did, because it was just pure college football. Controversial, obviously, some penalty calls at the end of the game. I'm sure Utah fans, the athletic director, by the way, is livid over it. You see that he was like accusing the Big 12 of stealing the game away from them.
We're gonna get into that.
We'll get into that.
We're gonna get into that.
But number 9 BYU beating Utah 22-21. Before we get to the highest grade players, I just want to go over. We interviewed Jake Retzloff, the quarterback for BYU, who we'll talk about in just a little bit as well. Dawn, at the end of the interview, and I'm upset that we didn't get this on camera. It's my fault for ending the interview prematurely, because I talked about him. I was like, hey, hell of a year you guys are on, man. And he's like, listen, I think there's some divine intervention with our season. He's like, in that UCF game, the whole rockets and all that for UCF, the rocket launching, and he's like, in that game, we scored a touchdown, and right after we scored the touchdown, I looked up at the sky, and the rockets started taking off. And I was like, if that doesn't show that there's some divine intervention in our season, I don't know what will. And I said, listen, Jake, every great college football team has got a little magic. You got to be a great team, obviously, but you got to have a little magic as well. BYU has some magic in this game. And honestly, after saying divine intervention, this is the team of destiny, it feels like, for BYU. So, unbelievable game for the Cougars, keeping their undefeated season alive. Let's go over their highest grade players, starting off with Chase Roberts, their wide receiver, 75.6 grade. Defensive tackle John Nelson, 74.4 grade. Jacob Robinson, the corner, 72.3. Jack Kelly, the linebacker, 72.2. Blake Mangelson, the edge defender, 71.3. And Jake Retzloff with a 61.3 grade. Going over to Utah with their highest graded players. Karenni Reed, the linebacker, at 76.6. Spencer Fano, the right tackle, 75.7. By the way, Spencer Fano has been unreal this year. So if you haven't checked him out already, because he is the right tackle. He's a true sophomore. I think he's the highest graded run blocker in the country right now. He might be a first-round pick in the 2026 NFL draft, so check him out. Elijah Davis, though, at corner, 72.1. Dorian Singer, wide receiver, 72. Smith Snowden, the corner, at 71.9. And Brandon Rose with a 76.1 grade at quarterback. Dawn, for you, what was that to tell a story in an unbelievable BYU victory?
Okay. At the end of the day, this was a really even game between two rivals in a hell of an environment, right?
Yep.
The one thing, I'm going to actually go back to that penalty to preface this, okay? First of all, I thought it was a good call.
Okay.
Utah
fans can kill you. It was close. It was very close.
Close?
Yeah.
I thought it was actually in a vacuum. I thought it was the right call. I'm going to tell you why that doesn't, one way or the other, it doesn't matter to me. There's a lot of coaches nowadays that talk about finish the game with the ball in your hands, right? Utah had 3 chances in the last 12 minutes to really kill this game with a lead. BYU just scored 21-19. They didn't get the 2-point conversion. Utah still has a lead, right? They play this tight, hard-nosed football, right? Their last 3 drives with the football, they ran 10 plays. They got 10 yards. They got 1 first down. They were 0 for 3 on third down. There was a big holding penalty on a 3rd and 1 run play that they didn't get either. They didn't even get the first down on that 3rd and 1, but a big holding penalty, and BYU was smart to push them back and stop them on 3rd and 11. Make Brandon Rose beat you on 3rd and 11. They're not going to do that, right? This, to me, is where Utah should be pissed off.
Yeah.
3 chances in the 4th quarter. You put a touchdown on the board? Cool. Honestly, even if you put a field goal on the board and you're up 5, I don't think BYU's scoring another touchdown in this game. I don't think they would have scored another touchdown the way they were not pass protecting in this game.
No.
Retzlaff had to battle through it. I mean, it was rough. They were blitzing him like crazy. The blitzes were getting home. I mean, it was hard for BYU. I won't lie to you. Yes, did they catch the 1 break? Sure. But if you're Utah, the part you should actually be mad about is not finishing the game when you had a chance. 3 different times. How many stops do you want your defense to get? How many? Because they've been getting them all night. They gave up before that last drive. And even then, even after the penalty, BYU had the ball at the 19 with a minute left and no timeouts. And you give up the big play to Chase Roberts and then another out route to Lassiter, and then that's pretty much just it from there. So I think Utah, for me, they lost this game the same way they've lost their other, 4 games, right? They have 5 losses now. They're just not good enough on offense.
Yeah.
Whether it was Cam Rising against Arizona State or the game against Houston where they scored 14 points or this game.
Mekhi Bernard didn't do enough for them either.
This is what they do. Even they scratched their way to 21 points. By the way, they scored all 21 of these points in the first half. They did not.
No, not even that. I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah. I mean, they did not score a point in the second half, and they had 3 drives, especially the last 2 would bother me when it's either milk the clock or score some points, and they didn't get either of those things done. I think Utah lost this game for the same reasons they've lost all their other games. They're just not good enough on offense.
Dawn, Utah scored all 21 points in the second quarter. 1 quarter, they scored all their points in. So my side to the story is that Utah, in the second quarter, .531 EPA per play, really, really good offensively. In the other 3 quarters combined, negative .558 EPA per play, a full point difference in the other 3 quarters. Like I said, all 21 points for Utah were scored in the second quarter. In the second quarter, they averaged 6.8 yards per play. Other 3 quarters, they averaged 3.9 yards per play. Dalton, they averaged 9.9 yards per pass in the second quarter. In all other 3 quarters, 1.8 yards per pass. An 8-yard difference in yards per pass in the other 3 quarters. Brandon Rose, 84.6 passing grade in the second quarter, 54 passing grade in the other 3 quarters. Their inability to do anything in the passing game for 75% of this game was what lost them this game. Their second quarter, you go back and watch it, they were driving on BYU. Whatever they wanted.
They did.
They
got hot. Yeah.
But for some reason, in the other 45 minutes, BYU, they couldn't do anything on the BYU defense and passing wise. So, yeah, that's my stat to tell the story is that they just, 1 quarter, Utah looked really unbeatable, honestly. And the other 3 quarters, BYU defensively shut them down.
Yeah, no, I mean, Utah, their offense got hot. They felt the mojo. They had the home crowd going. Brandon Rose was making plays. He was fired up on the sideline, right? But games are 60 minutes, and you're right. You have to play well for 60 minutes. You play 1 good quarter of offense.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the only game where we saw that. This week, you just can't. You cannot keep expecting your defense. Now, there's another game where one team did expect their defense to do it because they kind of had to, but we'll get there. But you can't expect your defense to do this drive in and drive out and week in and week out. And honestly, we saw Utah's what now, 5-5?
Yeah.
This is why they're 5-5. It's all of this stuff we just said about them offensively. BYU, I got to be honest, they just kind of hung in there. They hung in there. They kept making stops when they needed to. They hung in there, and when Retzlaff was given an opportunity, he made it happen. And I'm going to go into something later about close wins and why those still matter, because it's to come out of one of the toughest road environments in college football with a win like this against a rival. Credit to the Cougars, man.
Utah's 4-5, by the way. They're
4-5.
4-5 with games against Colorado, Iowa State, and UCF. So they got to win 2 of those last 3 games to make a bowl game. I don't know if they're going to do that. That's tough for them right now, honest. But obviously, they play great against BYU. Obviously, BYU is the best team in the Big 12 right now, it looks like at least. They could feasibly beat anyone in the Big 12 if they play like that. But they got to finish games, like you said. Dalton, for you, most impressive part of this BYU victory?
I'm actually going to credit Utah here and Morgan Scalley, their defensive coordinator. We've talked about Jake Retzlaff being so successful against a 4-man rush, a standard rush. Well, he didn't let him have it. He blitzed nearly 53% of Retzlaff's dropbacks. He got home on 42% pressure rate there. You mentioned Corinne Reed, 5 pressures and a sack. Lander Barton had 3 pressures as a linebacker. Van Fillinger off the edge with 5 pressures and a sack. This to me, it felt like there were times in this game it felt like Jake Retzlaff was under pressure every single drop back. And again, he kept battling, and props to him at the very end for fighting through. But Utah, with the blitz plan and everything they came up with on defense in their front 7, they bothered BYU's offense as much as they possibly could. And just look, I think Utah's offense let them down. Obviously, the penalty is a mistake, and the couple of big plays after that after that penalty were mistakes. But I'll credit Morgan Scalley and the defense. This was about as good an effort as Utah's defense could have put up.
Yeah, I want to shout out the BYU corners in this game. Mark Collins, 2 catches allowed on 6 targets for 19 yards. He had 2 forced incompletions as well, so as many forced incompletions as catches allowed. Jacob Robinson, 0 catches allowed on 1 target with an interception as well. In total, BYU's corners allowed 3 catches on 9 targets for 33 yards and a 5.6 passer rating allowed. They averaged 5.6 passer rating allowed. BYU's corners gave up in this game. Utah, like we mentioned before, time and time again, they could not get anything going in the passing game. It's been a theme for them all year. And listen, a big part of that is because their inability to push the ball downfield with their correct situation, but also a big part of it was BYU's corners really stepping up and playing well in this game. So I want to shout out BYU corners for playing really well in this victory for the Cougars as well.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to the next game, I want to shout out the chat right now. We have 480 people watching live right now. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's
now you're making me nervous.
Yeah, now we're nervous now. But obviously, please subscribe to the channel. We're doing this every Sunday morning, our review show, and also we're doing a preview show every Tuesday night, and also some other miscellaneous videos that we do as well. What do we do? A Heisman video every week.
Got a mock draft last week.
We just did a mock draft that we do every once in a while as well. So yeah, please subscribe to the channel because we do this every single week during the college football season. All right, next one, Dalton, is the game that we were in attendance for. Number 8 Indiana beating Michigan 20-15. Let's go over the highest graded players, starting off with the Hoosiers. Highest graded player was edge defender Mikhail Kamara with an 84.8 grade. Dalton, we were walking the parking lot before this game. We saw an older gentleman wearing a Mikhail Kamara jersey.
That guy knows ball.
He knows ball. I love that.
Kamara's an animal.
That ruled. I saw that and I was like, hell yeah, Bloomington is rocking right now. Linebacker Aiden Fisher, 82.7 grade. CJ West, D tackle, 81.3. Terry Jones, the corner, 80. Keyshawn Williams, the wide receiver, at 76.8. And Curtis Rourke with a 77 grade in the win. Let's go over to Michigan with their highest graded players in this loss. Cornerback Zeke Berry, 83.8. Jay Sean Barham, the linebacker, 79.8. Kenneth Grant, the D tackle, 78.1. Edge defender TJ Guy, 77.9. Tight end Colston Loveland, 71.4. And Davis Warren, their quarterback, with a 52.4 grade. Dawn, for you, what was the tell the story?
Okay, this game was weird. It was weird and it was tense, and it got dragged down to the speed that Michigan wants to play at. Look, Indiana was dominant in the first half of this game. It was 17-3 at halftime. And then it just all kind of stopped on offense. My stat, Max, Indiana had 18 yards in the second half of this game and held on to win. 18 yards in the second half, okay? 6 drives, 3 punts, a bad interception from Curtis Rourke inside his own 10, a field goal that was set up by a big punt return I'll get into, and then they killed the clock at the end of the game, okay? 51.8 offensive grade in the second half. First half was 75.4. That got them up 17-3. This Indiana defense, this was the first time late in the game that this team had to overcome serious adversity where they really could have lost. They had to overcome the interception I just mentioned, that Michigan got the ball at Indiana's 7, held them to a field goal. A 25-yard punt from deep in Indiana's own territory that, yes, they gave up a touchdown on a drive because Michigan only had to go like 40 yards, right? 2 potential game-winning Michigan drives. 2 times Michigan had a chance to go down and win the game, and they got stops. Their defense put up a 90 grade in the second half as a team. They had to come out. We've seen all year. They've put up all these points. Curtis Rourke putting up Heisman-level numbers. They got 1 million receivers and backs and all the things we've talked about so far with their offense. But Kamara and Aiden Fisher and C.J. West and D'Angelo Ponz and everybody else on their defense deserves all the credit for this win, for just holding together this team when the offense went completely stagnant. Understandably so. Michigan's defense is still really good, especially their D-line. Michigan dragged this game into the mud. And Indiana found a way to win even through that when a lot of other teams would have folded, I think, in that spot. Again, 18 yards in the second half, and their defense held on for the win. I think it's just a spot now where we go, look, we're going to question in the next 2 weeks whether or not they can or will beat Ohio State, right?
Yep.
I don't question their defense anymore.
No.
I liked their defense going in. I thought they'd played well all year, and obviously the grades reflected that. But in a spot like this, where their defense was put in 0 situations to succeed in the second half, and they succeeded anyway, props to them. Honestly, and I know, again, close win thing, and everybody's going, they barely beat Michigan. I don't care. I really don't. At this time of year, I don't care. Close games count as wins too, and this defense. Actually, I feel better about this defense right now, at least having a chance going into Ohio State, because they always say it, defense travels. Bring that defense the way they played in the second half on the road, you got a shot. Absolutely.
They do. Dalton, I might have the simplest stat ever for my set to story. Indiana has 10 wins this year.
We saw history yesterday, man.
10 wins. The first time ever the Hoosiers have won 10 games in a season. Ever. They've never won 10 games in a season before until right now. Dalton, this program in the last 3 years combined won 9 games. 9 games combined over the last 3 years. They averaged 3 wins per year before Curt Cignetti got there. And his first year at Indiana, they're 10-0. And dare I say, they have as good of a chance to make the playoff as almost anyone right now. Because even if they lose to Ohio State, if they beat Purdue, they're 11-1. I don't know how you leave them out.
You don't.
I don't think you can.
No.
I really don't. I understand the strength of schedule. I don't care, but they're 11-1 though, man.
And it's not in the strength. Look, I'll say 2 things. One, they've blown out everybody on their schedule except for this Michigan team.
Yeah.
Okay, and Michigan, you could tell, came in, especially in the second half, they came in with an extra jolt knowing what was at stake for Indiana in this game. And they still, no matter what they say, they still consider Indiana the little brother. And we all know it, right? 2, I'm getting kind of sick of strength of schedule. And you know why I'm sick of it in college football? Because the schedules are made 10 years in advance. Okay, in college basketball, I think it makes a boatload of sense. Okay, they make the schedules that summer, right? College football, we got games scheduled out to like 2038 right now.
Yeah.
How is it anybody's current fault that strength of schedule is the way it is? Also, I'm continuously told the Big Ten's the second best conference in the country, and they've just run their way through it until this game. No, I'm with you. 11-1, put them in.
Yeah.
I don't even care what happens in the Ohio State game. If they beat Purdue, they should get in.
Tyler said in the chat that just gave me a shiver down my spine. He said 11-1 Indiana is going to be the next FSU 13-0. That would break my heart. That would break my heart if we have to go through that again.
It would just be the wrong decision.
It would be the wrong decision. But I just want to get into this more. I mean, listen, I can't say enough about Curt Cignetti. He's the coach of the year right now, I think pretty clearly. We're in attendance of that game. Dalton, that crowd was electric. Bloomington was electric. Parking, the clear sign that you know your college football program is going in the right direction is when parking is a nightmare. It was a nightmare for us getting parking in Bloomington. Yeah. We didn't know where we were going to park.
And they didn't know where to put us. No, it was hilarious.
Literally, the parking attendant at that game, we rolled down the window. We were like, where should we go? He's like, dude, I don't know. We haven't seen this before. I'm overwhelmed. I just try to find something. I'm sorry. I'm so like the poor guy was like getting like all worked up over. Like
it is a new era in Indiana
they didn't know what to
football.
do. They didn't have the space to do it.
And I think the thing that sums it up too is, what is it? We heard somebody say on the way they were doing the fireworks after the game when we were walking out, and there's some guy that goes, "Oh, they've been saving those for 100 years."
It's like,
I mean,
we're turning around. Like, I was like, "Damn, it's a lot of fireworks." He's like, "Yeah, they've been saving that for a decade."
But I think you just can't discredit the fact that they are 10-0. There's only 4 undefeated teams left, and they're one of them.
Yep.
I mean, you can't discredit that. They're excellent on offense. That second half was the only bad half of offense they've played all season.
Yeah.
Even in the game against Washington with Taven Jackson playing instead of Curtis Rourke, they scored, 31 points in that game? 34, whatever it was? I mean, they played one bad half on offense all season. So, they should be given full credit for winning this game because Michigan, we saw in the second half, when Michigan can play games at their speed, we've seen this in their wins even, right, is – okay, now they're a threat because this is at Michigan's pace. It's defense. It's running the ball. It's making stops. It's turnovers. The interception was big. And again, Indiana, their defense stepped up. This is a really good football team.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't think this is one of the 12 best football teams in the country, I don't know what you're watching. Just watch. They've been dominant, except they've been dominant for 9.5 games this season. And then they needed one half in this game where the defense bailed them out, and that was a dominant unit. So no, they're one of the best teams in the country, and it's going to be so much fun to watch them go to Columbus.
Yeah, we're gonna be at the game, right? We'll be there. So we're gonna be there as well, which would be unbelievable, and just all the Signetti Marlboro shirts and towels and flags were awesome. Oh, dude, that place. Just the fact that one of the most electric environments, we've been to a lot of amazing games this year. One of the most electric environments we've been to is Indiana. That's awesome. That is just so awesome for college football, honestly. Dalton, for you, though, what was the most impressive part about this Indiana victory?
So many defensive guys, and you're going to get into more of that. But let me go with one offensive guy I was really impressed with that I think, look, this team has so many weapons, and seems like they have somebody different step up every week. Let me go to Keyshawn Williams, slot receiver here. Okay, 6 catches for 70 yards. Big catch on a corner route on their first touchdown drive, right? You're coming down towards us when we were watching on the right sideline. Spectacular catch that set up their first touchdown. 2 big first down catches in the fourth quarter that at least kept some sort of momentum going. The punt return I mentioned earlier to put Indiana in position for a field goal that put them up 5 and made life a little bit harder for Michigan at the end. I thought Keyshawn Williams, number 5 at receiver for them, made some of the biggest plays of this game, had a 78.7 receiving grade at the end of it. 3 contested catches, again, 3 first downs, all 3 of them very, very big in this game. He just was a guy, I think, we can't get lost in the shuffle here, how big a role he played in some big moments. Keyshawn Williams, big performance at receiver, even though the traditional stats might, just 6 catches for 70 yards. Monumental stuff, plus the punt return where I counted up 5 missed tackles on that punt return. That really shifted some of the momentum late in the fourth quarter back towards the Hoosiers.
Definitely. My most impressive part is the Indiana run defense. So, Dalton, time and time again, we say, you want to stop Michigan? You stop the run, because this offense is practically incapable of throwing a forward pass right now. And Indiana, 92 rushing grade for the Hoosiers. Dalton, they allowed 69 rushing yards total to Michigan. 2 yards per carry Michigan averaged in this game, with 0.4 yards before contact per attempt allowed. On 32 carries, Indiana's defense got 23 stops. 23 stops on 32 carries. Basically, run defense stops or anything that's like a success for a defense, right? So 23 of them were successful plays on 32 carries for Michigan. 7 tackles for loss or no gain in this game as well for Indiana's defense. Listen, we got to go back in farther. I couldn't find it, unfortunately, but this is the fewest yards per carry for Michigan in a game in the PFF college era. Again, going back to 2014, so over the last decade plus of college football, Michigan has not rushed for this few yards per carry in the last decade plus. And I can't even find, when the last time they had 2 yards per carry or worse before this. So just an amazing game by Indiana's run D, because again, like I said, the only way Michigan can beat you offensively is with their run game. And Indiana did not allow them to do that. And again, you mentioned before how the defense stepped up in the second half, and a big reason for that was just stopping Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings, all the running backs there, and just shutting down that run game and forcing Davis Warren to throw the football. And if you do that, you're going to beat Michigan 10 times out of 10.
Throw one more number at you before we move on. In Michigan's longest carry of the day was 8 yards. That says it all. No, you're right. That's the one thing that it stuck out more than anything. Their front seven was dominant. I mean, you saw the guys now: Kamara, Aiden Fisher, C.J. West, Jalen Walker, a linebacker too. They got monsters in their front seven. I think they can physically play with anybody in the country.
I do too. I really do. So it can be an unreal game in a couple of weeks when Indiana takes on Ohio State. We'll, of course, be there and preview that game in a couple of weeks as well. Dawn, another game we got to talk about is number 20 Colorado beating Texas Tech 41-27. I bet most of the almost 500 people in the chat right now are waiting for us to get to this game. So we'll talk about this game now. Colorado beating Texas Tech by 14. Let's go over the highest graded players, starting off with the victorious Buffaloes. That is, highest grade player for them was edge defender Arden Walker with an 83.9 grade. Jordan Seaton, my guy, with a 77.3 grade. Unreal year for him as a true freshman left tackle for them. DJ McKinney, the cornerback, 77.2. Nikhil Green, also 77.2. And Levante Bentley, also a 77.2 for the Buffaloes. And Shorter Sanders with a 65.9 grade. All right, let's go over to Texas Tech with their highest graded players in this loss. Linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, 73.9. Chapman Lewis, the safety, 70.2. Caleb Rogers, the offensive tackle, 69.4. Braylon Rigsby, the D tackle, at 68.4. Marion Horn, the corner, 68.1. And Baron Morton, 62.7, the quarterback for the Red Raiders. Dawn, for you, what was the stat that told the story?
All right, so this game started out pretty rough for Colorado, didn't it? They were down 13-0 early. They couldn't find anything on offense. They were some things in coverage. They were kind of, as I've been talking about all year, trying to figure out the play calling mix and how much man coverage do we run or zone coverage, whatever. You know the one reason it felt like even through that deficit they were going to be okay? Because what is the thing, one of the two things, and you know where I'm going with this, what are the two things that I keep saying are going to win this Big 12?
Stop the run and quarterback.
And that first one, you stop the run in this Big 12 with so many dynamic run games. And they, for the most part, did that with Taj Brooks, especially early in the game. First 3 quarters of this game, Taj Brooks had 23 carries for 58 yards, all 58 of those yards after contact. They were dominating Texas Tech's offensive line in the run game. This was their third game. All right, Colorado had an 83.5 run defense grade in this game. Third time this season over an 80 for their run defense, okay? In the previous 4 seasons, 2020 through 2023, they only did that 3 times combined, okay? This run defense and all those guys we just saw in that top 5, Arden Walker, the 2 linebackers, Hill Green and Bentley, B.J. Green, Sam Okunlola, Chidozie Nwankwo, how many other guys? Cameron Silman Craig at safety. This was a concerted effort, I'll say it over and over, in the transfer portal this year. Last year they were collecting talent. This year they were getting the meat and potatoes. And that's what they did in this front 7. Stopping the run in this game kept them in it when they were down 13-0. Okay? Just like in the UCF game when they were slowing down R.J. Harvey. The only game where they didn't really stop the run was the Kansas State game. And even then they had a chance to win. But for the most part, this Colorado run defense has really been the biggest turnaround for this team. And I know there's some other factors we can get into. And let me get into those 2 linebackers. You know I love talking about these 2 linebackers, especially Hill Green. But these 2 linebackers, Levante Bentley and Nikhil Green, combined for 11 run stops, okay? And in run defense, they missed 1 tackle, the 2 of them, all day. Levante Bentley was ready to hit Taj Brooks in this game, and he's one of the hardest. He's 230 pounds. He's a bowling ball. He breaks tackles like crazy. Bentley was ready to hit Taj Brooks in this game, and because they didn't allow Texas Tech to run the football when they had a 13-0 lead, that's what kept Colorado in the game, waiting for Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and LeJontay Wester and everybody to get in their rhythm. They don't have a run defense in this game. They lose this football game, and probably by a lot. This revamped run defense Colorado has the 2 things. They just have to go and win the rest of the games. They have the best quarterback, I think, in the country, and they have, at the very least, a top 30 run defense, if not better than that. They have the 2 things, and it's more proof in this game.
Dawn, the fact that they barely missed any tackles against Taj Brooks, who is a human bowling ball.
Taj Brooks had 5 forced missed tackles all day, and honestly, that's very low for him.
That's very low. very low for a guy like him who just thrives off just breaking tackles and punishing defenders, and Colorado was inflicting the punishment, which I'll get into in my most impressive part later. But my statistical story, you mentioned before, Colorado started off really slow in this game. They averaged negative .491 EPA per play in the first quarter, and it was .175 for the final 3 quarters of this game. You mentioned they're down 13-0 going into the second quarter. Final 3 quarters of this game, they outscored Texas Tech 41-14. 2.2 yards per play in the opening quarter, 5.9 yards per play, more than double, almost triple, honestly, in the final 3 quarters. They never, ever looked rattled. They make the proper adjustments offensively and defensively, and they were the better team for the final 45 minutes. There was so often last year where Colorado got punched in the mouth, and they just had no answer. Right now, Dalton, they're getting punched in the mouth. They come back in the second round, and they keep swinging. That's what they can do time and time again. That's what great teams do. And listen, I've told you this last night. I have been blown away by how good the coaching has been for Colorado this year, because we knew they had the talent. It was just, okay, can they capitalize on that talent? They are doing that now.
And it's 2 new coordinators, mind you, with Shermer and Livingston.
And Livingston was running so much cover 1 yesterday, and we're like, oh, just start to switch it up a little bit. And he did. To his credit, he did. This is not a guy who's just going to live and die by one scheme. He's switching it up. They're doing a great job of switching up offensively as well. I have just been blown away by the coaching in this game, and obviously Colorado, just the resolve of this team to get punched in the mouth time and time again, but keep swinging. And they always deliver the knockout blow, and they did in this game.
Yeah, no, and I keep saying it. It actually started, it sounds funny, it started in the Nebraska game. And it sounds weird because they got blown out in that Nebraska game, right? But they shut out Nebraska in the second half, okay? Then they bounce back. They take care of business against Colorado State. Then they're struggling with Baylor, and it's the Hail Mary. Then they lose to K-State, and they come back and reel off, 3 or 4 wins in a row now. It's a resilient team. It's a resilience they didn't have last year, and I think it's a lot of trench play they didn't have last year. I keep saying it. Guys like Nakai Hill-Green and B.J. Green and Chidozie and Nwankwo, these are the guys making this football team what they are right now. Obviously, they have Shedeur and Travis, and we know that's what makes them real dangerous. Those are 2 of the best players in the country, but the fact that this is a well-rounded team now is why they're in Big 12 contention with 3 games to go. And look, there's a couple of dangerous opponents left on their schedule. We've seen it. Utah can play with anybody. We know this. Kansas is raging hot lately, and we're going to move into that in a minute. But Colorado has the inside track. They're in the driver's seat right now for the Big 12 title game.
Absolutely. Dawn, for you, the most impressive part of this Buffalo victory.
I keep talking about the front 7 on defense, and they're getting tougher. This offensive line.
I'll talk about the front 7. We're going to switch now, because I always talk about the offensive line, and you always talk about the front 7. We're going to switch now.
We now have another situation.
We've had
several situations with Colorado. We had a situation on this offensive line, and I think I'm going to tease. I think I want Colorado's offense this week when we preview them this week, because I want to talk about this more. But Max, their pass protection, Jordan Seaton and those guys up front,
superstar. I'll say it right now, Jordan Seaton's a superstar.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Superstar. But their offensive line was only charged with 4 pressures in this game. No hits, no sacks. 81.7 pass pro grade. Texas Tech only had an 18% pass rush win rate. You want something fun? All right, so they lost to K-State. Let's go back. The next week they beat what? I think it was Arizona that next week. Yeah. Their last 4 games span back to week 7. All right. You want to know a scary thing with Colorado right now? Since week 7, they have the 3rd best pass blocking grade in the Power 5. You protect Shedeur, and this is going to happen.
Yeah.
If this pass protection,
if they protect Shedeur, they're scoring 40 every time.
I'm gonna dig in, and especially over the last 3 games, find more details. But I remember a quote from Deion Sanders earlier in the year, and he said, when they kept asking him about his offensive line and what your answers are, he goes, honestly, I remember him saying this. I don't remember when. He said, honestly, I want to play like 7 or 8 guys up there. I don't want it to just be 5. I want some depth. I want more guys who can play. And the last 3 games, that's what he started to do. Now, he's got the 2 tackles, Seaton, and I think it's Phillip Houston on the outside. Yeah. The 2 tackles are staying tight. On the interior, they're rotating like 6 guys in there. They had Cash Cleveland playing center for the most part instead of Hank Zielinskis yesterday, and Zielinskis was playing guard, and they're rotating guards and doing things. We've seen this out of like a team like Clemson before, where they'll rotate guards every drive. They're rotating guys on the offensive line and kind of keeping them, at least on the interior, fresh. It's working. And if Colorado's going to have top 5, top 10 pass protection, you have a real problem on your hands now, because all we've ever said is if Shedeur is clean, he's going to kill you. Well, he's clean a lot more often than he used to be right now, and honestly, he had to play a conservative game in this one. Texas Tech did a nice job. I don't think Shedeur completed a deep ball in this game, and yet they found a way to get through it. And just because, again, well-rounded football team, this is dangerous now. If their pass protection plays like it's played the last month, have fun.
Don, I don't know. They could beat any defense in the country if they protect like that.
Yeah.
They could.
Yeah, they have the weapons.
They have the weapons, and they have the quarterback to do it. So if they protect like that, they legitimately can, beat any defense in college football, in my opinion. I want to talk about the front seven, though, a little bit more. The key to winning this game for Texas against Texas Tech, and I mentioned this in the preview, was physicality. You have a bulldozer of a running back in Taj Brooks, and you have a Red Raider offensive line that is really strong in protecting the quarterback. I think they have like a top 15 pass blocking grade in the country entering the year. Colorado in this game had an 83.5 run defense grade, 27 stops on 37 attempts. They averaged 4.3 yards per carry, Texas Tech did, in this game. 75.6 pass rushing grade. 8 sacks for Colorado. 8. That's the most in a game for Colorado in the PFF college era, again, dating back to 2014, so over the last decade plus of college football. 17 pressures, 50% pass rush win rate. I want to shout out a few of the guys as well. Keaton Wade at 2 sacks. Arden Walker at 2 sacks. BJ Green second at 2 sacks. Amari McNeil, a lot of people in the chat right now are very upset. Amari McNeil is not one of the highest graded players. He was very good. I will say that. Maybe the grades didn't show it, but he was very good.
He was good. Pass rush, the run defense grade was a little lower for him, which is why he didn't quite make the top 5, but he had a good day for sure. Any day you have 2 sacks, right? It's a good day, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So Amari McNeil was very good as well. I mean, listen, they all had 2 sacks. Their 8 sacks came from 4 players. All 4 of them had 2 sacks. This front seven, dude, has just been such an amazing development for Colorado, because we knew that the offensive line and the front seven, that's the story of this team right now. And listen, Travis Hunter, we think should win the Heisman Trophy. We both agree on that. Shedeur Sanders, one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the country, but we kind of knew that going into the year. What we didn't know was if this offensive line and if this front seven would be good enough for them to be this good. They have been this good. That's the story of this team right now, is the trenches for both offensively and defensively. They have been great. And we knew, again, another thing we knew, the secondary had stars. We knew they had stars in the secondary. Did they have the guys up front? Yeah, they do now. Their front seven's improvement is really the story of their season, in my opinion. So Colorado, unbelievable job. And now, Dalton, they control their own destiny.
It's right in front of them because
of Kansas beating Iowa State in this one. Just an unreal game for the Jayhawks. 45-36, beating number 17 Iowa State. We want to remind people, because I know a lot of Colorado fans might be turning off the show right now. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video as well. And we have a lot more Colorado content coming out very soon. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for that. Of course, we'll be previewing the Kansas-Colorado game and Utah-Colorado game coming up very soon. Let's get into this Kansas-Colorado game.
Iowa State.
Excuse me, Kansas-Iowa State game. Yes,
you're getting ahead of yourself now.
I love talking Colorado.
Now you're getting 2 weeks ahead of yourself. Easy now.
Let's go over the highest grade players, starting off with the Kansas Jayhawks. Highest grade player for them was tight end Trevor Cardale, 92.5 grade for the tight end in this one. Mello Dotson, the corner, 85.1. Quentin Skinner, the wide receiver, 83.1. Devin Neal, the running back, at 79.1. Dylan Woodkey at a 74.9. And then Jalen Daniels, how about him? We'll talk about him in a little bit too, but 92.2 grade for the quarterback in this game. Iowa State were their 5 highest grade players. Jalen Noel was their highest grade player at a 82.2. His fellow wide receiver, Jaden Higgins, at a 75.3. Steve-O Klotz with a 74.4 grade. Jared Holford, 74.3 grade. Jalen Travis, 69.5 grade. And Rocco Beck rounding it out with a 76.2 grade. Steve-O Klotz is a hell of a name for a tight end. I love that.
That's awesome.
That's elite.
That guy could only play tight end.
That's a tight end name right there.
Darn right.
That's outstanding. He should get a 99 grade for that name alone. But for you, what was the little story in this Kansas upset?
All right, we're going back to the 2 things here, okay? We're going with it. Quarterback play and run defense, right? In the Big 12, that's the things we've been talking about. Now, Rocco Becht is pretty good. Actually had a pretty good game outside of one throw I'll get into in a minute. Iowa State is not going to win this conference because their run defense is just not there. We've talked about all year that Iowa State's flaws were in the trenches. They had a 50 run D grade in this game. That's their lowest of the season. Kansas had 237 yards on the ground, and I know Jalen Daniels made some really nice throws. We'll talk about that too. He must have drank his coffee before this game because he came out firing. But no, this run defense, between the injuries at linebacker, the way their defense is structured, they don't have any big monsters on their defensive line. This was always going to be the problem for Iowa State, right? We saw it against UCF when they got run all over and they won anyway. We saw it last week against I'm drawing a blank. Who beat them last week? Texas Tech. Texas Tech with Taj Brooks. This game, Devin Neal and Jalen Daniels, they have for this season, for the whole season, they have the second worst run defense grade in the Power 5, only ahead of I think it's Oklahoma State. I want to say. It's just not. They missed 13.
It is Oklahoma State.
Yeah, they missed 13 tackles in run defense. I mean, this was the thing. If you're gonna get through the Big 12, you have to defend the run. Almost every single team, aside from probably Colorado and maybe Arizona, just about every single team in the Big 12 can run the ball.
Yeah,
you can't go week in and week out with a bottom 10, bottom 5 run defense. You just can't do it. And this defense, look, they're great in coverage. And this is a team built to pass and stop the pass. But this can happen. And their last 3 games, I believe they're playing Cincinnati, Utah, and Kansas State. This is going to continue to be an issue. And especially, you talk about that last game against K-State, could still be a huge game, but how in the world did they stop K-State on the ground if they couldn't stop Kansas and they couldn't stop Texas Tech and UCF and all these other teams? When you're in the Big 12, you can't defend the run,
yeah,
you don't have a whole lot of a shot. And that's where Iowa State's at right now. Even though Rocco Becht, outside of one throw, was pretty good in this game. Mm-hmm. Jaden Higgins is great. My guy Jalen Knoll is great, right? They got guys in the secondary, Darian Porter and Miles Purchase and guys. If you're not good in the trenches and you can't stop the run in this conference, you don't stand a chance. There's too many teams that can run the ball.
And you don't stand a chance either if Kansas is averaging 11.4 yards per play in the first half. Dalton, they went to halftime with a 31-13 lead. It was over. That was it. Iowa State could not come back from an 18-point deficit going into the second half. Kansas averaged .630 EPA per play in the first half. 6.6 yards per carry for the Jayhawks in the first half. Dalton, ready for this? Kansas in the first half averaged 16.7 yards per pass. 16.7 yards per pass.
Jalen came out firing.
Yeah.
I mean, when I tell you, he must have been.
Do you know what his average at the target was in this game?
Oh, it was something
20 yards.
I
20.
I didn't see the number, but just watching some of the throws.
He was letting it rip.
Oh, yeah.
He came out to prove something in this game. He had a 94.2 passing grade in the first half. Dalton, he had 4 big-time throws in the first half alone in this game. Whatever they wanted against the Cyclones on the ground. And when you do that, you make their linebackers and defensive backs creep up because they don't have the run defense like you just mentioned. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you take shots over the top, which Jalen Daniels did beautifully in this game against Iowa State. So just 11.4 yards per play in the first half, 31 points in the first half, almost 17 yards per pass in the first half with almost 7 yards per carry. Literally whatever Kansas wanted, they were doing. It looked like Andy Koldenik was drawing up plays for Kansas in this game, honestly. They were just doing whatever they wanted offensively against the Cyclones. And like I said, that first half, the game was over at halftime, honestly.
Kansas came out feeling like they could attack this team.
Yeah.
And they did, and on the ground and through the air. I mean, this is what Kansas was supposed to be the entire year, and they've lost a lot of close games. Run the ball, take deep shots with Jalen Daniels. That's what they do. So, no, absolutely. Again, underdog gets in their wheelhouse, gets in it early in the game, they can pull an upset like this for sure.
Definitely. So, Dawn, what was the most impressive part of this Jayhawk victory?
I'm going to take a really underrated player on Kansas defense. Let's go out to corner. They got a pair of good corners, and the guy that was really good in this game was Mello Dotson.
Yeah.
Look, an 89.4 coverage grade in this game. He was the one guy. Look, Rocco Becht got a good amount of yards and made a lot of really nice throws in this game, but not at Mello Dotson. He targeted him 3 times, no catches, had a pass breakup, and a pick 6 in the middle of the fourth quarter. It's great play, too. I mean, just reaching up to get the ball and then returning it. Pick 6 that really put the game away. Iowa State had the ball down 10, and this was the play that was it. The game was over. It was 17. Now they were up 17 with 6 minutes to go. Mello Dotson, really good player. 86.7 coverage grade for the year. It's the 11th best of any corner in the country. No, he's doing special things over there, and I know Kansas, look, they haven't won a ton of games this year. They played in a lot of close games, but they're dangerous, and they're playing some contenders down the stretch here. What is it? They have one of the big. They have BYU next week. Yep. BYU and then Colorado back-to-back. I'll tell you what.
We're previewing those games.
This conference might come down to who's beating Kansas. K-State pulled away with it. Iowa State didn't. And Kansas all of a sudden became an X factor in this conference just as the ultimate spoiler, and they're really dangerous when they play the way they've played the last couple weeks.
Don, this is only their third win of the season. They are incredibly dangerous still. I know they're 3-6, and people might look at that and say, "Oh, they're not a very good team." No, they are a good team.
They are the ultimate, don't look at the record team. Yeah. They've lost a lot of games by a lot of close field goal. Yeah.
Let's just let me look at their schedule right now.
The UNLV game, the K-State game.
They lost to Illinois by 6.
Yep.
UNLV by 3. West Virginia by 4. TCU, they lost by 11. Lost by 4 to Arizona State. They lost by 2 to Kansas State. And then, like I said, those.
Oh.
Every game is close.
Their season on a handful of plays could look a lot different. Kansas is the best 3-6 team in the country. I'll promise you that.
They're
dangerous.
Their one game their one loss that was not a single possession loss was when they lost by 11 to TCU.
Yeah.
That's it. Every other game was at least 6 points or fewer they lost by. So they are a dangerous team.
Way better than their record.
That BYU and Colorado cannot overlook, especially now that BYU and Colorado control their own destiny in the Big 12. That's insane, honestly, dude. I think it's a perfect microcosm of this chaotic year of college football, that two schools that not a lot of people thought would even make a bowl game this year, now with 3 weeks left, both BYU and Colorado control their own destiny in the Big 12. I need that as a Big 12 title game. That would be electric.
Long way to go.
Our guy Red Sloth against Shedeur Sanders.
This is going to be a long
way to go. It will be a very long.
Long 3 weeks.
Very long 3 weeks. All right, so we have, like I mentioned before, we will be doing our playoff bracket as well. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that after week 11 of college football. But first, we got to go over our biggest standouts from week 11 of college football. So basically what this means is, outside of the 7 games we just talked about, who were some of the players or maybe units in college football that really stood out to you? So, Dawn, for you, what was your first standout of Week 11?
Get a big defensive lineman, Jordan Burch, going from the Oregon Ducks. He got a big win over Maryland. They're one of the few undefeated teams left, number 1 team in the country. 4 pressures, a sack, dominant as a pass rusher, a 91 pass rush grade. And I got to love the added bonus of him getting a 36-yard carry on a fake punt. He looked like a running back out there. He was 300. He's 300 pounds. They could put him in the back. He was putting moves and stiff arms on people.
That was my favorite play of the week. That rules.
It was fantastic. But Jordan Burch, that Oregon defensive line's got some really good players on it, and he's one of them. Again, a 91 pass rush grade for the game, and then the highlight he gave us on the fake punt. Gotta love it.
Dude, Dan Lanning was in his bag right there. That was Dan Lanning. Like, watch this. I'm gonna give Jordan Burch a fake punt. He's gonna get a first down out of it. Yeah, that's awesome.
An athlete. That's a 300-pound athlete, is what he is.
That was just. I love Dan Lanning so much for calling that in the first place. And even having that in the playbook in the first place for your edge defender, be a guy in the fake punt, is just awesome. Riley Leonard is my first standout. 90.3 PFF grade in their 52-3 win over Florida State. Dawn, this is the second straight game Riley Leonard has a 90-plus PFF grade. He's never had a 90-plus PFF grade in his career before this. He had 215 passing yards and a touchdown against Florida State, 81 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns against Florida State as well. If this is the right, listen, I understand it's Navy and it's Florida State. I understand that. But if this is the Riley Leonard that they get every year, or every game in the season, they're incredibly dangerous, man, because they got a really good defense, obviously, and Riley Leonard has been the one question with him is him as a passer. Last 2 games, he's looked pretty good as a passer, honestly, and like I said, 2 straight games with a 90-plus PFF grade. He is on fire right now at a time where they really need him to be on fire.
They're another team that controls their own destiny, and that's big for them to have balance. There's some games coming. Look, Virginia next week is spunky. They just beat Pitt last night. Army's still undefeated, and then at USC, you never know what happens there. But Notre Dame, you know what? Riley Leonard's playing better lately. They can run the ball. They have the defense. They control their own destiny for sure.
All right, Dawn, who's your next standout?
I need maybe the most underappreciated running back in the country. We talk about so many running backs every week.
I'll go into the most appreciated one next.
You're darn right. But I'll go with the underappreciated. Makai Hughes from Tulane.
Yeah,
and I know they're playing Temple, and it's a huge win, and they're supposed to get a huge win. But Makai Hughes just does it every week. 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 85 rushing grade this week. Forced 10 missed tackles. Max, for the season, he's 4th in the country in both rushing yards and rushing grade. He's just the engine of the offense, and this is a Tulane team still in the playoff mix. Let's not get this mixed up now. If they beat Navy this coming week, they clinch a spot in the American title game against Army. If Tulane wins, actually both teams will clinch. And then you get a game with Army that could be that's obviously going to be a lot of fun. And all it takes is one Boise slip-up, and the American champion could maybe we got something going there for the American in a playoff spot.
Maybe. Louisiana's up there, too.
Louisiana's up there, too, in the Sun Belt. They've looked good. But Mekhi Hughes, I'm going to tell you, if you don't know about Mekhi Hughes down there at Tulane yet, you're talking, this is one of the elite running backs in college football, and I believe he's a true sophomore. He'll be back next year. He's going to walk in next year as one of the best backs, if not the best back in college football.
The current best back in college football, though, is Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Just another day at the office, Dalton, honestly, for him. 205 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns in a 28-21 win over Nevada, 7 broken tackles, 122 yards after contact. And Dalton, right now, he has 1,268 yards after contact through 9 games. The record is 1,355 by Jonathan Taylor in 2017. He needs 87 more yards after contact to tie the record by Jonathan Taylor. And he's going into his 10th game now. He's going to shatter that record, obviously. But the fact that he's that close already to the PFF record for yards after contact, set by one of the elite running backs in the NFL right now, and Jonathan Taylor as well, unbelievable, dude. Unreal that he's that close already. He might hit that next game. The way he's running the ball right now, 90 yards after contact, that's very doable.
Probably will.
For Ashton Jeanty. Also, he is 14 broken tackles away from Bijan Robinson's record of 104. So right now, Ashton Jeanty has 90 broken tackles on the year. The record is 104. He's going to shatter that record as well. I mean, this guy is just shattering all kinds of PFF records. He's going to have the highest rushing grade probably of all time, too, for us. This is the norm now. The fact that, we're not, Ashton Jeanty running for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, in any other game, they'll be like, oh, everyone would be talking about that. It's just it's another day at the office, like I said, dude. It's crazy that this is the norm and what we're expecting for Ashton Jeanty. This is a C-plus game for Ashton Jeanty probably at this point now. He ran for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's insane, dude.
Well, his grade's only lower than you'd think because he had fumbled once. But other and we pretty much kill you for fumbles. But otherwise, no, he's a monster. I mean, you talk about those records. No, he's still top 2 for Heisman, I think. Yeah. I mean,
Cam Ward losing now, yeah.
I know Cam Ward tried this week, and he just couldn't overcome the rest of Miami's flaws.
I'm not putting Dylan Gabriel at number 2.
It's Hunter and Jeanty, isn't it?
Yeah, like we said
now?
All year.
And if it's a quarterback, it would still be Cam.
Probably. Or Shador.
But they're going to go Hunter over Shador, and how that goes. But no, it's Hunter and Jeanty right now for the Heisman. I think at least it should be.
Yep. All right. So who's your last standout of the week?
I got a fun one. I got a fun one we haven't talked about this year. You know who's leading the nation in catches and yards and touchdowns? If you wanted to take a guess, who are a couple names?
I know who. I think I know who you're going with. It's not Ted McMillan, right? Is it Nick Nash?
Because your thought, right, here we go. Your thought would be, it's McMillan. Yeah. It's Trey Harris. No, it's Nick Nash from San Jose State, who had, first of all, yesterday a win against Oregon State for the Spartans, okay? 161 yards, touchdown, a little lower receiving grade than you would think, had a couple of drops, but leads the country in catches and yards and touchdowns. 4th with an 87 receiving grade. 2nd in missed tackles forced. He's just got some silly numbers right now down there for San Jose State. They're having a good year, the 6-3, kind of on the outskirts of the Mountain West race right now. But you're talking about a guy who's, and the weird thing is, it's a slot receiver. He plays in the slot 93% of the time. He's 6'3" and 200. He's this big slot receiver who just makes contested catches. He makes people miss. How about 1,156 yards and 13 touchdowns for San Jose State this year? Nick Nash is a guy we might need to study a little bit more. We haven't talked about him before this week.
No, we have not.
I think we need to study him a little more down in that group of 5 level just to see what we have.
He's probably going to be a finalist for Blindikoff.
I watched him in yesterday's game. Yeah, he probably will be with numbers. He's got almost 100 more yards than Tedero McMillan. Now, he's got 135 targets in 9 games, which is silly. But, he's putting up the numbers. And look, San Jose State, again, probably not making the Mountain West title game, but they're kind of creeping on the outskirts there. They got a few games left to try to make up some ground. But Nick Nash, superstar down there at the group of 5 level, too.
Yeah, he is a stud. I got to watch more of him. Admittedly, I have not watched too much San Jose State film with everything else going on, but I've heard his name a lot. I know his stats are unbelievable, so I got to watch more of him, and he's becoming a guy I know in the NFL draft as well right now. So, yeah, Nick Nash has been balling all year. Another guy's been balling, Dalton, Abdul Carter, who I think right now, I'm willing to say, he's edge one in the 2025 NFL draft. I'm willing to say it right now. He had a 92.1 grade in a 35-6 win over Washington. 2 tackles for loss or no gain against Washington. He had a sack, a hit, and 3 pressures on 21 pass rushing snaps. Also had 5 other wins on his pass rushing snaps as well. And you remember, there's some times where you can win, you could beat the guy blocking you, but not get a pressure or sack or whatever because the quarterback gets rid of the football so quickly. And Will Rogers is a quarterback that gets rid of the football very quickly. So Abdul Carter was, I know the 1 sack, 1 hit, 3 pressures maybe doesn't jump off the stat sheet. He was dominating against Washington in this game. 38.1% pass rush win rate. And Dalton, the first week of the season, in his first game full-time playing edge defender, he wasn't very good. They played West Virginia and also an elite offensive tackle in Wyatt Milam as well. So he had that to go through. Since that game, though, he has a 91.7 PFF grade since week 2. That's the best in the nation among all edge defenders. So Abdul Carter, he's got the athleticism. Obviously, he's a freak athlete, absolute freak athlete. He's going to run like 4.4 something probably at the combine. He is a freak. The Micah Parsons comparisons are going to be insane, from Micah going from linebacker to edge in the NFL, Abdul Carter going from linebacker to edge at Penn State. Both wear number 11. Both are freak athletes too. They're going to be insane Micah Parsons comparisons. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far with him, but Abdul Carter, I'm willing to say right now, in a wide open edge class, I think Abdul Carter is a guy I would go with first.
And not just switching. This is his first year switching.
Yeah,
this is his first year full time as an edge player, and he's doing this. I was
playing well as a run defender too, which I was worried about.
I was really impressed with him when we saw him last week against Ohio State. Dominant in this game. I mean, he is a dominant player. If you get in obvious passing situations against Penn State, number 11 is your number 1 issue. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you're talking about it's an edge group that I think has a lot of talent in this upcoming draft. There's a boatload of talent, I think, on the defensive line, but not there. You haven't seen one guy separate himself yet, right? We saw James Pierce get off to a slow start. Nick Scorton's kind of balanced, I think, better as a run defender. Good pass rusher, but a great run defender. This is an explosive pass rusher that every team, I think, in the NFL is going to be looking at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think him, Pierce, those are probably my top 2 right now. I would say Carter and Pierce.
Scorton's up there.
I like Scorton. He's a close third, really, but those are my top 2.
And you know what? Well, you mentioned Princely earlier.
Yeah,
that's a darn good one too. If you want a pure pass rusher, Uman Mielen might be your guy, especially in the back end of that first round.
Yeah, let us know in the chat for everyone still watching right now. Who's your edge one currently in the NFL draft? But Dalton, we got to get to our current bracket,
the fun part.
The current bracket going into week 12 of college football. So obviously we'll find out exactly what the playoff committee thinks on Tuesday night during our review show probably. But this is what we would do as of right now for our current bracket. So start off with the top 4 seeds in the college football playoff currently. Number 1 is Oregon. Number 2 is BYU. Number 3 is Texas. Number 4 is Miami. I want to remind people, this is not the exact top 4 of what the PFF top 25 will look like. You can find that, of course, tomorrow morning at pff.com. But the 4 highest ranked conference champions would be the top 4 seeds. That's why they're the top 4. And before we move on, Dawn, a lot of people are seeing probably 2 and 3 and going, what on earth are you talking about? I want you to look at BYU's schedule. I want you to look at Texas' schedule, and you tell me what's the better resume. BYU beat SMU, who's a top 15 team in the country and very close to being in the playoff right now. They beat Kansas State, who's also going to be close to being a top 15 team in the country and very close to the playoff. Who has Texas beaten this year? They beat Michigan, who's going to go 6-6 this year at best. They beat Oklahoma, who's going to go 5-7 probably this year. That's it. I don't understand.
And they beat the best team they beat was Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt by 3.
Yeah,
by 3. I look at that schedule. You look at BYU's schedule, and you look at, and also the fact Texas lost a game. BYU has not lost a game yet. That's another thing as well. So that, to me, it will not happen that way. I can guarantee you Texas will be above BYU in the ranking. But you look at the resume right now, I don't think it's an argument. BYU is over Texas.
All right, I'll do the rant now.
Go.
I have already seen multiple opinions floating around of people saying, oh, after last night, close win. Okay, cool. That BYU wouldn't be in their top 10.
I saw that too, dude.
Let me tell you something. First of all, the resume thing, like you mentioned, I think they have to be in the top 6 at least.
Yeah.
Have to. And I think it's perfect because in your rankings you have
3.
You have Ohio State 2, right?
Yeah.
And you have BYU 3.
Yeah.
I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. I am so sick and tired of teams getting penalized for close wins, but it's also only when people feel like penalizing teams for close wins. We even saw the committee do this last year.
Yeah.
So they played a close game with Oklahoma State and won.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Last night, hated rival. Utah's playing their Super Bowl this year because they're not going anywhere else, right? Hated rival, one of the biggest rivalries on the road, wicked loud environment, tough game, battled through. Yeah, I got one call. Won the ball game.
Yep.
Still made plays to win the ball game, okay? I'm so sick of hearing about teams with close wins.
Yeah.
Some get penalized and some don't. Because when it's Georgia beating Kentucky by 1, I don't hear about that, right? When it's Miami winning second half comeback after second half comeback barely, week after week, I don't hear about that. When it was last year and Alabama beats Auburn, who I think went 6-6 on essentially a Hail Mary, I didn't hear about any of that when we were arguing Florida State versus Bama, right? Why is it, and I kind of know why, but why is it that we pick and choose? First of all, the close game thing kills me. If this week you get on Indiana or BYU for winning a close game, get off it.
Yeah.
Because close games are a part of football. Okay, no, look, does anybody? I know the NFL's different because they have polls and rankings and all that, but Chiefs win close games every week.
Yeah.
What are they? They're the best team in football. That's fine. I'm so sick of it because we
punishing for wins.
We pick and choose when to penalize teams for winning close. Unless it's something like you're playing Kent State or somebody like that and you beat them by 3.
And we love the Golden Flash.
And we do. But like it has to be something, or an FCS. If Alabama goes and beats Mercer by 4 this coming week, then I'm going to be like, okay, that's concerning.
Yeah.
But when I got a rivalry game on the road, Alabama did the same thing last year against Auburn. Nobody batted an eye.
Yep.
So I'm tired of that. And I'm tired of like sometimes these rankings are subjective and sometimes they're not. Like the Miami thing last week when the committee got asked why Miami was ahead of BYU and they said offensive prowess. And I go, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
But it takes a full football team. When they didn't have all the offensive prowess this week and they can't win games with their defense or whatever else, run game, however, then it's, now we know Miami's not a complete team. No, you knew it the whole time.
Yeah.
And if last year you were ranking things based on offensive prowess, well, no matter what, LSU would have been the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
So I'm tired of this subjective using whatever criteria we feel like every week, and I'm really tired of teams getting penalized for close wins. I have no issue with you having BYU at 3 based on – it has to be – you mentioned this weeks ago. Eventually it has to be based on what you've done.
Yeah.
They went into their biggest rival's home stadium, battled through a really good defense and a whole lot of adversity all night, and they came out with a win in the middle of November. I don't even care what the margin was. I don't care that they won by 1. I don't care about the penalty because Utah had 3 different chances to put the game away. That's well-deserved, BYU being in your 3rd spot there. That's the number 1 thing I'm so sick of. Well, they barely beat them. Nobody says that about Oregon, Ohio State.
Yeah, they don't. No, they don't.
They don't say that.
No.
What if Will Howard slides 2 seconds earlier?
Yeah.
They don't say this with anybody until they feel like, well, let's knock this team down for the fun of it.
There's an agenda with some of these schools. There really is.
If BYU,
it's sad.
It was already wrong that they were number 9?
Yeah.
That was already wrong.
Criminal.
And if they stay there or they're any worse because they won a close game against their biggest rival, something's wrong.
Dalton, 2 of the teams BYU beat are still alive for the college football playoff.
Yeah.
That's the 2 teams BYU beat in SMU. Who was the other one? I'm blanking.
K-State.
K-State, yeah. They also, by the way, you want to talk about close wins? They beat Kansas State by 30. Beat them by 30.
I can take every single team up here and point out a close win. Iowa State barely beat UCF. Colorado's had some close ones, right?
Yeah.
Georgia beat Kentucky by 1, right? Ole Miss has been struggling on offense. I mean, Miami with all the comebacks. You can't pick and choose when to penalize teams for a close win. Either do it to everybody or don't do it at all. Don't do it to some of them.
I love the close win thing. They beat Kansas State by 30. They beat them by 29. That's not a close win. They blew out a top 15 team in the country by 29. I don't know what we're talking about BYU. So yeah, I'm glad you're on my side here because I put them above Texas. I know it's gonna be a hot take, but look at the schedule. I mean, listen, their 2 wins are better than anything Texas has done all year. Anything. all year. So, all right, let's go into the matchups. Now we get off the soapbox here. Let's go to the matchups for the first round of the college football playoff as what it would be right now. Number 5, Ohio State, continue to be number 5. They're actually number 2 in my overall ranking, but number 5 against number 12, Boise State. Number 6, Penn State against number 11, Notre Dame. Number 7, Indiana against number 10, Ole Miss. And then Tennessee and Alabama in a rematch in the 8-9 matchup. Anything that stands out to you on the first round there? Well, I know you're going to get into it.
There's a couple. I mean, Penn State, Notre Dame. Here's the only thing I'll say. The only argument I have with you here is I could argue a flip flop. I could put Indiana ahead of Penn State.
I totally get that.
I know Penn State lost to Ohio State. That's one thing, but I also think Indiana's been more consistently dominant than Penn State has.
Yeah.
Also, selfishly, an Indiana Notre Dame matchup for the state of Indiana
that would rule. I didn't think about that.
Absolutely. You should have flipped them just for that. Indiana versus Notre Dame in a playoff game, no matter which location.
That would have been awesome. I screwed that up.
The biggest game in the history of the state of Indiana. But no, I think in Tennessee, Bama, a rematch down there at the bottom is a lot of fun. No, I think the questions now for me are you have Georgia as your first team out? Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah. Can we go into the? I think we have a graphic too. The first 4 out just show the schools that just missed out on making it. Georgia, Texas A&M, SMU, and Kansas State.
It shows right here. I think the lack of clarity in week to week. What we have in the SEC. It's you want chaos. The SEC is an absolute shambles when it comes to chaos. I mean, it's incredible. What is it? Everybody except for Texas and Tennessee has 2 losses at least. We think LSU just got knocked out. A&M's sitting there with a huge game against Texas the last week of the regular season coming. Georgia's playing Tennessee next week.
Yep.
I mean, that could be who knows what that could bring. After what we just saw yesterday from Georgia, the lack of clarity in the SEC more than any other conference is insane right now. And then SMU's floating there in a weird situation because they're going to be rooting for some other teams to lose, but you know what, too? I think they got to be feeling pretty good. Take care of business.
Oh, yeah.
Now that we know Miami, we knew it before, but they didn't lose any games yet. Now that we know Miami's vulnerable, SMU's got to be feeling like, maybe the ACC title, maybe not. I'm curious to see what happens with SMU if they do get to 11-2.
I don't think they get in. I don't think it's good enough.
I think there's a lot of other circumstances. When you think about
that's fair,
if there are only 2 losses, though, are to BYU and Miami.
Yeah, I mean,
and those 2 teams end up, let's say, as 2 of the top 8.
I'm just worried about their wins, and then you start comparing those, and I think they'll come up short to other 2 losses. A lot of other 2 losses teams.
I think
all of them,
I think SMU. I think it's a very much closer situation than we think. Beating Pitt the way they did might help them.
Pitt, they beat Louisville, which is helpful.
They have dominated some other teams. They beat Louisville, who's ranked. That's a huge win at Louisville. The better Louisville looks every week. SMU, I think, is a wicked, intriguing situation there.
I think, and I love SMU. I personally think they're not getting in if they lose a game, whether it be in the regular season. If they win the ACC title, obviously they're in no matter what.
But I think if they lose if it's Miami, I don't know how the tiebreakers work now with them and Clemson, but if they lose to Miami in the ACC title game, they've got a fascinating case.
Yeah.
That's because they're 2 losses. The other loss being BYU by a field goal.
I could.
That's tough. I think SMU's got to.
They'll probably go into conference title weekend in the playoff, but not like as the 11 or 10 seed maybe. And then if they lose, I think they get bumped out.
It's tough.
It's tough. It's really tough.
I think it's going to be tough. Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating. But yeah, that's what we got for our current college football playoff rankings. If you want to see the full PFF top 25, if you're watching this tomorrow, if you're watching this on Sunday or Monday, you can find the full PFF top 25 at pff.com as well. All right, Dalton, before we go, let's talk about some of the games we're going to preview for Tuesday. Not all of them. We got to determine the other ones we're going to talk about. So what are some of the games we're going to preview Tuesday night at 6 p.m.?
Still debating a couple more. I was vouching for a game or 2. We were talking about this, but certainly Tennessee and Georgia. That's going to be that's the game of games next week. That's by far the game of the week. Georgia's all of a sudden in trouble. Tennessee maybe trying to finish them off. Who knows? But they know from what they saw from Ole Miss's defense. I think Tennessee's defense can play with them. It's going to be fascinating. Big game in the ACC. I think you have kind of a loser leaves town type of game with Pittsburgh and Clemson. Yep. Pittsburgh with another loss last night to Virginia. Clemson got a big win over Virginia Tech. Big game in the ACC. And then another big week in the Big 12.
Huge week in the Big 12.
Colorado hosting Utah. And we know Utah's always dangerous, right? You got Kyle Whittingham. You got their defense. It's another dangerous challenge. We mentioned dangerous. Top of the Big 12. BYU's playing Kansas. They're off a big upset over Iowa State. Or maybe not a big upset the way the lines were, but They won the ball game. They're the best 3-6 team in the country.
Yeah.
Yes, we're previewing the game. Yes, Kansas is better than you think they are. And then an interesting one, Kansas State trying to stay in it behind those two teams against Arizona State, who got a win over UCF yesterday without Cam Scatabo. Sam Levitt carried them to a win in a game that, honestly, when I heard Scatabo was out, I thought they were going to lose that. I thought UCF was going to go out there and win that game.
He is their offense usually. Yeah.
Generally, yeah, but Sam Levitt got them through, and their defense is good. And I think it's a very interesting game. The style that Arizona State plays and that Kansas State plays, I think, is interesting. And we're gonna debate. We're gonna add a couple more games to that, but we're arguing as we always do with each other on which ones it's gonna be. So there'll be 2 or 3 more thrown in there, but those are the main ones we're getting at this week.
Yeah, I can't wait for that Tuesday night preview show. I want to shout out the chat for our best chat of the entire season. We had like over 600 viewers. I think we hit 700 at one point as well, which is insane for the show right now. So I really appreciate you guys.
College football's running hot.
We're running hot right now. So make sure you guys like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. That really, really helps us out. And make sure you guys stay tuned for our Tuesday night preview show for what should be a pivotal Week 12 of college football. So for our producers back there, and of course Eli is not here unfortunately, but for Sav and Quinn, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick, and we'll see you guys Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for our Week 12 preview show.